You are about to hear from an incredible couple, Sandy and Jeri Harris from Butler, Georgia. I think it's important for you to understand the setting of this conversation. I set up my recording equipment in their den in their home. I'm sitting in front of them at a little table, and they are side by side in their recliners. Not only do they sit there during the day, but they also sleep in those recliners. Due to physical limitations they will talk about, they are unable to get out anymore, although Sandy has certainly not given up hope he will be out again. Thankfully, they have two wonderful children, a daughter who lives down the street who checks in on them multiple times a day, and a son who lives in Florida but is also in constant contact with them. He actually called his dad during our conversation. I edited that out. Their lifelong investment in their children is paying off huge dividends for them these days. They also have another special gift. Mary Edmondson Youngblood, who was born the same year as me, is their caretaker. They have a great one. Mary has been our friend our entire lives. Also sitting in the room behind me is a cheering section consisting of my wife, Kathy, and Sandy's brother, Mark Harris. There's also another person in the room that you will hear from time to time, although I think I edited most of Bo out so not to confuse everyone. Well, it is not actually a person. Bo is an African gray parrot, and he talks just as plain as you and me. He's also a master mimicking Jeri and Sandy's voice. When Bo speaks, you will think it is Sandy or Jeri speaking, and he uses their familiar phrases. I had planned to interview, or at least get Bo to say a few words for this podcast, but I left without doing it. If I did not think I had worn Sandy and Jeri completely out with this almost hour conversation, I would have turned around and gone back to get audio of Bo the parrot. If you happen to notice Sandy is a little short-winded, he is on oxygen as we speak. Jeri, next to him, is paralyzed on her left side. Although they do have physical limitations, you will quickly see their cognitive abilities are not compromised at all. Their positive attitude about life is not compromised either, nor is their faith in God compromised by what they are going through or have gone through. Everyone has a story. The Harris' story is special. They have truly experienced the sunshine in their lives. Both had stellar and successful careers, and they have literally traveled the world. But like all of us, they have also experienced the rain, not only in their lives, but in the lives of their children and grandchildren. Sometimes their experience has been more than rain. Flooding would probably be a better word. But when I asked the question about their thoughts on why God would allow them to go through things they have gone through or are going through, you will hear their answer loud and clear. It is apparent they've already asked that question many times in their lives. They say the question is not, why us? The better question is, why not us? This is Sandy and Jeri Harris.
Viewing life from a hearse, it could be worse. Laugh, think, and cry with the country undertaker.
This is Bruce Goddard, and you're listening to the View from a Hearse podcast. I have two long-time friends with me today, Sandy and Jeri Harris, that I just told you about. I'm honored to have them on here today. I'm sitting in their den looking at them. They're in recliners where they stay most of the time these days. I've known these folks a long time. Jeri, I think you used to change my diapers, right?
I was best friends with your sister.
Yeah. So let's start with Sandy. Sandy, here you are, been active all your life, and now you find yourself confined to home. Just talk just a little bit about how you got to where you are today, sitting in this recliner.
I really don't know. I was fine. All of a sudden, I got where I couldn't breathe like I wanted to.
Well, you had kidney cancer to start with. I'll hush.
She can't help it. She absolutely can't help it. Anyway, I couldn't breathe like I wanted to. Went to my cardiologist, and they said all that was fine. I still having trouble breathing. Went to a pulmonologist, and went to two, as a matter of fact, and they decided that I had COPD, and I've never smoked. Don't know how. I did grow up on a farm and use chemicals and all that, so that could have exacerbated it.
How long have you been homebound, Sandy?
Homebound about a year and a half.
Right.
Now, I still hadn't given up. I'm working toward getting back out.
Well, you keep on working. How old are you?
I am 80 years old.
Jerry, you're 78. I know you were born same as my sister. Tell us what's going on with you.
Well, I had breast cancer in my 70th birthday. The doctor called me in and said, "You've got breast cancer, and we're going to start out with chemo." So they did 15 rounds of chemo, and it left me with the worst case of neuropathy. Ooh, the doctor said he never had seen such a bad case. Of course, I had a stroke after my surgery. I had both breasts removed. My stroke paralyzed me on my left side. My left side's paralyzed. But
So, folks, let me just tell you, I'm sitting here looking at them. These people are loved by a lot of folks, and you're going to hear a little bit of their story. I grew up in this same county here, I can tell you, and I don't know of a couple that's more loved and more appreciated than Sandy and Jeri, and that's the truth. And they really went down different paths as far as what their careers were, so they touched a lot of different people. So let's start by talking about growing up. And I'll start with you, Jeri, this time. You had Winnie and J.W. Wyndham, who I knew all my life. My mama and your mama used to visit shut-ins. I remember that as plain as day. So talk about a little bit about your growing up and the parents that you had.
Well, first of all, I was so fortunate to have two Christian parents who raised me in a home where if the doors of the church were open, we were there. We went on Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. They taught me the way I should live and what I should do. But the main thing is I grew up in Reynolds, Georgia, which was the absolute best place I could have grown up. I rode my bicycle all over that town. My mom and daddy owned the dime store.
Wyndham's Dime Store.
Wyndham's Dime Store. Daddy told me I had to work. I worked in the dime store, and he put me in a counter case in the ice cream bar. And he said if I didn't watch out, I was going to eat up all his profits. Because I would go by there on school morning to go to school. I'd go by the dime store and I'd get me a sack of candy and take it to school with me. And when I was in the 8th grade, my teacher made me write 1,000 times, "I will not eat Reese's peanut butter cups in class."
I was interviewing my grandchildren one day, asking what they want to be when they grow up, and two of them said they wanted to be ice cream people. So they serve ice cream. That's a pretty good thing.
When I was a teenager growing up, I dipped 300 ice cream cones one Saturday at the dime store.
And I wonder how many of those I ate.
Yeah.
I was probably one of them you were dipping.
Yeah.
So, Sandy, how about your parents? You grew up on a farm. You had wonderful parents. Your dad was on the county school board forever, farmer here. And your mom, you got great memories, too. Just talk about a little bit of the impact they had.
I grew up on the Butler level. Out just about 3 miles south of Butler off 19. And first things I can remember out there, I was, my mother and I, we said many times, grew up together out there. I think Mama was in her late 20s, early 30s, and my brother Mark didn't come along until I was nearly 6. And then my brother Dan came along when I was 12. But there was nobody out there but us. The only vehicles that we saw during the week, Mr. Herbert Wiltshire, who was Wilberdine Tant's father, rode by in his truck every now and then. And then Mr. W.S. Payne, that ran Payne's place here in town, would ride by with Mr. Joyner every now and then, about once a week.
So y'all were just out by yourself?
By ourselves. We didn't have but one vehicle.
Right.
It was the truck that Daddy drove. We were there by ourselves, and I would give nothing in the world for growing up out there like I did. I was thinking this morning about how did we grow up, me and my brothers, and without, I don't know how to sound, but everything that happened in our family was, we looked to the church, and I don't mean that in a way you might think, but it was what my parents wanted us to do was biblically based.
Right.
We wanted to do, you've seen the old bracelet, what would Jesus do?
Right.
That was how we grew up. Every time the church door opened, we were there.
So you at Lebanon Baptist
Lebanon
Church,
Baptist
you're still
Church.
a member of today?
Yes, I am.
And Mark, your brother, is.
That's right.
Y'all go there. And then, Jerry, you at the Baptist Church in Reynolds
First Baptist Church in Reynolds.
for all those years, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
So this, a little bit's changed in the world. Not many people have their lives revolving around the church.
That's
you know
right.
that, and that's a lot of who you are. Yeah.
Well, Bruce, before that, I was Taylor Mill Baptist Church.
Right,
'cause
right.
I grew up in Potterville.
That's right. I remember that. Yep. But you grew up in the church all your life, yeah.
All my
There are people now, ladies that I could name that are in their 80s, that remember my mother doing, it wasn't GAs then, but it was a women's group that Mama had at the house. But anything that we did out there was, I better not get in trouble. I better do right.
Right.
And I knew that.
Your mama could also cook,
My,
right?
oh, Lord.
Yes.
And
You can look at my brothers and me and tell that.
you still using the recipes. And Jerry, your mama did some cooking too. The Underwoods out there, y'all had a huge. So just so people understand, Jerry is my wife's first cousin. Jerry's mother and my wife, Kathy's daddy, were siblings. And there was a lot of them, but
11.
11 of them. That connection I didn't even mention earlier. So talk about, Jerry, I'll start with you. How in the world did you meet Sandy? What, y'all been married 55 years, right?
At church. I think we had a revival, and my sister played the piano really well, and she would go around different churches that would need a pianist.
And her sister's Jane.
James
Yep.
Bickley.
All right.
And they had a revival service down at Lebanon, and then we went, of course, and I just met Sandy there. And then when I was at Mercer, I went to Mercer, and Sandy was at Mercer, but I said to myself, I'm not going to marry anybody from Taylor County. No, sir, buddy, not me. I'm going on somewhere else. But God had different plans. But we never dated in college. Never dated, not one time.
But you saw him at Mercer, right?
Oh, yeah.
He was a big athlete. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah, he was a big athlete at Mercer, but like I said, I wanted to be far away from him as I could. And so we never dated at Mercer. And we got out, and I started teaching school, and Sandy was teaching school. And they had little boxes in the office at school with your name on it, and that's where the principal would put any notices that he had for you. And one day I opened my box, and there was a note in there from Sandy. He said, as soon as basketball season is over, I want to take you out to dinner. So that's how we got.
And so now, folks, 56 years later, whatever it is, they sitting side by side in recliners here, and they see every move each one of them makes. That's amazing. Sandy, what's your remembrance?
I remember, like she said, first time I ever remember seeing Jerry was at church at a revival. And I remember the preacher I can't remember which one it was, but anyway, he said, he was preaching at Taylor Mill and at our church. He said, we've got one of our deacons from Taylor Mill here tonight. We'll ask Mr. J.W. Wyndham to lead us in prayer. And there was a little girl sitting next to him, and that was Jeri.
I want the
Jane
girl.
Jane was playing the piano, but that was where I met Jeri. Then in high school, she was 2 years behind me, but I remember being a cheerleader. And then she showed up over at Mercer when I was there, but our paths didn't cross much over there. But then when she got out, she told the story. But I did put the note there. But I would like to add that the first time I went out with her, she invited me to come to her Aunt Nellie's house for a cookout.
Is that right?
And it was having a cookout.
So she didn't go to the dinner with you. She invited you to
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
But one more thing. When I was at University of Georgia working on my master's degree in the summer after the first year I taught. And Norman Carter and I were living together up there in Alan Spiller's apartment. Norman said, I got to go home this weekend. I got an interview with that cute little Wyndham girl. Word for word, what he said. He came back. He said, I hired her. And I said, hey, that's good. I told him, and she doesn't believe me. I said, I might marry her. And that was before I ever had a baby.
She worked for him.
Yes, she did.
30 years.
Yes, she did.
30, over 30 years.
You also have two wonderful kids. Talk a little bit about your kids and what they mean to you and the impact they've had on your life. You raised them, and now they're coming in and checking on you guys. Just talk a little bit about that.
We're blessed. I spent time in my teaching as a guidance counselor, and I saw what kids that don't do so well, what it does to their parents. But we've been blessed. I can't think of any more delight than kids that are good kids for their parents. It's
Right.
more than anybody could ask for.
And I know through all what you guys have been going through,
Yeah.
can you imagine if you didn't have them? Can you imagine? Jerry,
That's
talk
true.
about Will and Lee.
Oh goodness gracious, they're just wonderful. They to know that they're both good Christians and raising their families, their children to be Christians is. I think about that scripture in 3 John. I can't remember. I hope I'm probably not quoting it right, but it says something like, I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in the truth. And that's so true, because they both do, and I'm so thankful for them. But they check on us. That was Will calling a while ago. They check on us. Leah'll be down. She comes in and out, in and out. She's usually here trying to find us something to eat for supper.
Folks, there's some lessons here. I hope you guys that have got your ears on right now listening to this. These people raised their kids in the church. They raised them well, and now they looked after them a long time, and now the kids are looking after them, and it's just a cycle of life. But this is a wonderful, heartwarming story that the investments you made in those two are paying off, aren't they?
Oh,
Yeah.
Lord, yes.
Yes, it is.
I mean, that's more than whatever money you got in the bank. Don't matter. It's the
That's
investment
exactly
you made in those people that matters now.
Exactly
right.
right.
Yeah.
right.
And you also got, how many grandchildren you got?
5.
I know Lee teaches school. Will is running the businesses that you started.
He's taught school
he
15
taught,
years.
Yeah, and he also played ball.
Yes, he did. He played ball, and I followed him around. And why I followed him around, I was repaying the debt. My daddy followed me around. He went everywhere I did.
What you saw growing up is what you did. And
Exactly
that's
right.
exactly what, whether it's the church, whether it's following him all around playing ball, or following Lee and all the stuff she's done. You saw that as a kid, and you end up doing the same thing. That's kind of, so it's so important.
It is.
What you do with your kids when you got a chance. There's people listening to this that's got kids.
That's right.
And there's people listening to this that's got elderly parents. Like, you know, we're all elderly sitting here. We're all senior citizens.
To get returns, you've got to make an investment.
Yeah, isn't that true? That's true in business. That's true in life, isn't it?
Back up with my Mercer story. I went over there, played ball in high school, baseball and basketball, enjoyed it. Went off to Mercer. My granddaddy wanted me to go to Mercer. He was the one that, my daddy's daddy, wanted me to go to Mercer because it was a Baptist school. So, good luck with that.
Right.
But anyway, I went off over there, and I didn't have any idea of playing ball. I mean, that was a different league from where I had come from. I got there, and I went down to the gym and shot basketball that first quarter. Then I noticed on the wall that it said tryouts next week, such and such time. I said, well, I went to the library and got a job, if you can believe that. And I went my second day, and I happened to walk back by the gym, and it says tryouts tomorrow afternoon, 3:30. And that night, I called Daddy. I said, Daddy, they having tryouts tomorrow. I've got to try. I've got to go out. He said, I knew you would. Go ahead. And so I did, and got out there with them. And we wound up. They gave me a uniform. And there was 5 of us new that year. They called us the 5 freshmen. 4 of them on scholarship. Jim Hearn, Bob Reeves, Judge Tommy Day Wilcox, Don Baxter, who wound up being the team doctor for the Houston Oilers, and me. They were on scholarship. I was on the team, but went through the year. I got in 1 or 2 games, but the year was out, and a thing had happened over here at home before I started. One of our tractors, our only tractor, was involved in a wreck that killed a lady. Wasn't our people's fault, but it was what it was. And Daddy couldn't get a crop in. So it was time to go back to school the next year. And Daddy called me, said, Sandy, we hadn't got the money to do it. I don't think we can let you go back. And I said, well. And so Mama and me drove to Thomaston the next day and went to the Martha Mill. And Mama knew somebody up there, and they applied for me a job at the Martha Mill. And that was on a Wednesday. On a Friday, Carlton Jordan, who lived here, came by and said, so-and-so sent word that Sandy can start to work Monday. So now that would work. Well, that Saturday, Mark and I were out cutting limbs off, pruning peach trees, which wasn't my favorite thing to do. But we had a bunch of them. But a car drove up that we didn't recognize. And when they got out, it was the basketball coach from Mercer and the athletic director. And we invited them in. And of course, Mama cooked them a meal, and Daddy came home and we ate. And to make a long story short, they said they had come over there to want us to know that they was going to offer me a half scholarship to Mercer. Now, out of the blue, out of the blue.
Right after this happened, and y'all couldn't afford, you were going to
That
work
Monday,
in the
that
cotton
Monday,
mill.
yeah, I would have been. Now, where in the world would my life have gone? I would like to think I would have gone back to school, but you never know.
So do you think people at Mercer heard about your plight and came over, or you think they just giving you the scholarship?
Daddy always swore that he never said anything to anybody else, know anything. And maybe that's the case. But I do know that Daddy stood by at every game I had. Dr. Lee, I don't know if you've heard of him, the W.G. Lee house over there.
Right.
And he gave all kind of money.
Right.
They told me, somebody, Coach Wild and them, did tell me that Dr. Lee paid my scholarship, my half scholarship, that later on got into a full scholarship.
So you look back and you realize that if this man or these coaches or whatever happened in your life would have been completely different. But the other thing that you need to say is you ended up in the Mercer Hall of Fame, right?
Yeah.
In 2 sports.
I did.
Yeah.
I was thinking the other day, I hadn't thought about that much until they started talking about the quarterback from Georgia. What's his name last year?
Stetson Bennett.
Bennett. They said he was a walk-on.
Right.
I
Right.
was walk-on at Mercer and made the Hall of Fame look in there.
And you played baseball and basketball. In the Mercer Hall of Fame.
I started at Mercer from midway of my sophomore year. The rest of the time, he tried not to, but in basketball, but I played first team then, and in baseball, I played every inning of every baseball game that was played for 4 years over there. I didn't miss a single inning.
I loved Mercer. I really loved Mercer. I loved going to Mercer.
So how many years were you in Mercer while he was there? Just a couple?
He's 2 years ahead of me.
Did you date him at all while you were in Mercer?
Not one time.
Did you see him play in sports though,
No,
right?
I didn't go.
You didn't go?
I didn't want to go. I did not want to go because of course, I'm glad my mama's gone on to heaven now because she died. She heard this. When I was a sophomore, senior in high school, I think, I got the notion that I wanted to do. Y'all remember the man in, what was it, Buena Vista, that he told fortunes?
I don't remember, but tell the story. I'm interested.
And I said, I want to go get my fortune told. But my mama didn't believe in that, so I couldn't ask her if I could go. I just had to sneak off and go. And I did. I went, and first thing he told me when he had held my hand out, looked at me, he said, beware the letter S. That's true. Beware the letter S.
And you married a guy named Sandy.
Married a guy named Sandy.
Did you think about it when you were walking down the aisle?
No, I didn't think. I thought about it a lot before I walked down the aisle.
Did you ask him to change his name to?
Well, he's Ronald Sanford.
Right.
So
That's funny.
a lot of people call him Ronald.
Wow. How do you keep your spirits up? There's people that are going through stuff like you're going through. Both of y'all have such a great attitude. How do you do it?
Well, one thing I say to myself over and over again, this too shall pass. It's just, it'll pass. It'll pass. In God's timing, that's the only way I want it to be is in God's timing.
Right. And if we live here 100 years, it's a drop in the bucket to all of eternity.
That's right.
That's the only way to look at this thing. You got to look at it from God's perspective instead of our own. We go nuts looking at it from our perspective,
That's right.
for sure.
I'm still planning on getting up and getting back out.
Right.
We got little calves we need to be looking after.
Yeah, I need to see my calves, and I need to be in Columbus. But Ever how it works out, how can I complain? I mean, I've had a good life.
Talk about your career. Yeah.
Which one?
Talk about what you've done. I think it's worth people hearing.
Well, I started off teaching school. I wanted to play baseball. I wanted to professionally. And when I got out of college, I knew I couldn't. And Norman Carter came and got me. Norman coached me my senior year. Mac Marchman was my coach until then. Norman, the last game I played, Norman was over there. And he came after the game and said, "Now you're through. You want a job?" And I said, "Doing what?" He said, I want you to coach B teams for me." And I said, "All right." So I came back and did that. Taught that first year and got out. And when school was getting out, I got a call in the office, and it was my college baseball coach, Claude Smith, who I love to death.
We know Claude's son.
Yeah, little Claude. Yeah. Claude Smith, I loved him like another daddy. I went to the office, and it was Coach Smith, and he said, "Can you come to Macon next so-and-so?" I said, "Yeah." "Why?" He said, it was ever who owned, I think it was Cleveland, owned the Macon team then. They want you to come over and try out.
The minor league baseball team.
The minor league baseball team.
Yep.
Said they got scouts down, and said, "Will you do it?" I said, "Yeah." And I hadn't seen any real pitching for a year, and I'd thrown batting practice to kids out there. But I went out there and worked out with them. Did okay. Had a catcher there. I remember that I was throwing everything. Said, "You got anything else?" I said, "Yeah, I got a knuckleball." And I threw it, and he reached over here, and the ball went right there. About to hit him, but
he's
anyway,
a southpaw, folks, by the way.
Yeah, I'm southpaw. After that was over, they called me in the office and said, "We'll give you a contract." Said, we'll send you to our high A team in Bakersfield, California. And I said, "Well, let me go home and talk to my parents about it." I got home and told Daddy, and Daddy was shaking his head the whole time. He said, "You can't do it." He said, "If you do that, you'll be in Vietnam in 3 months."
Right.
If they'd have called me, I would have gone.
Right.
But I didn't want to go.
No, I don't.
And so I couldn't. That's my only regret that I can think of in life is I didn't get to try.
Right.
I think I could have hit them.
Yeah.
And one more thing that I've left out before. The reason probably that I got to play basketball like I did was I had help. There was somebody over there as a assistant, graduate assistant when I got there. I don't know if you've ever heard of Bobby Dews or not.
Oh, yeah.
But Bobby
Dews was with the Braves.
Yes,
yeah.
he was.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Bobby stayed after. Bobby played for Georgia Tech. I don't know if you knew
I
that.
didn't know that.
He was a star
But
guard.
I remember he was worked with Bobby Cox.
Yeah. But anyway, Bobby stayed after practice for no reason other than to help me get to where I could use that hand. And Bobby's help is the reason I got to play, and I appreciate it.
You've done a lot of stuff since baseball, though. Talk a little bit about your career, what you've done, Reader's Digest, and whatever all you did.
After the school teaching, I knew I wanted to be in something else, something sales. Is where I thought I could do the best. So I was going to get out and was going to sell life insurance, which I didn't really want to do. But anyway, I walked in over at a store in Columbus one day. I'm always collecting something. And I walked in a shop that to find pocket watches. And I walked in, and it was where north side of Money Miser is now. And they was in there, and a guy named Robert Whidden was in there, one of the owners. and we got to talking, and they asked me, they were out buying gold and silver. Didn't I want to go with them? And if I'd get up $25,000, we'd go out to all over the United States and buy gold and silver. I did that. Got back when that was over, and they had one of their partners in the shop that wanted out, divorce. But anyway, I wound up buying that share back in 1980. Got into that. Then, somewhere or another, I got in with Reader's Digest and did school fundraising for my real job for 20 years.
Right.
Went all over the United States. Jerry and I went, I think, 3 trips to Europe, Hawaii, Bahamas, Bermuda, San Francisco, you name it, we went.
Right.
All over from that job.
Trips that he won.
Right.
The trips
Right.
that I won. Made friends all over. And
How many of the money miles of places did you end up with?
well, now right now we've got 10. That started from Robert Whidden, who died about 2 years ago, and Kenneth Thunderbird is one of my partners, and then Robbie, who is Robert's son, our partners. But we started with 1, and we've got Columbus, Macon, Phoenix City, Auburn, Montgomery, Dothan, Panama City, and 3 in Jacksonville.
Will is running those.
They talked me into getting Will to quit teaching school and to come help organize and run these things. And it's a full-time job. It runs him to death. We buying a turboprop airplane where he can move around to.
Wow.
This, as a matter of fact, in the next month or so.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Folks, I'm talking to Sandy and Jeri Harris. This man's had a heck of a life. It's absolutely insane at what all he's done to make a living. And people don't know all that, Sandy. You've been all over everywhere. I had a hint of it, but I didn't know all of it.
The other thing that I didn't mention is I collected coins since I was 9 years old. I've do coin shows. Jerry and I did a lot of coin shows for real. I'd buy a substantial amount and sell a pretty good bit of coins every year. But
and you still have your coin collection.
Oh,
right?
yeah, I still. That keeps
He's an
me
expert
going.
at that, folks. He knows every coin, everything. I can promise you.
Well, I've been doing it since I was 9.
Yeah.
If I don't know it now, I won't ever know it.
I hear you. Jerry, how'd you put up with all this that he did all his career? Jerry worked for 30 years for the
School system, paying the people that work for the school system.
right.
Doing
And
payroll.
you were in central office, and talk about a little bit about what you did in your career too, Jerry.
Well, when I graduated from Mercer, I graduated with a degree in French and business management. What a combination. And I taught school 5 years. I taught high school French in Taylor County High School for 5 years. I carried a group of students to Europe. We toured several countries. It was wonderful. But going back to Will a second, I got to tell you the story about Will. Will loved teaching. He loved teaching. He was a wonderful teacher. He taught English, and he said he had talked to him, the partners, and told Sandy they wanted Will to come to work, pawn shop. And Sandy said he's not gonna quit teaching school. He loves it. But Will said he went to school that morning, and he always fixed him a cup of coffee and went to his room and sat down and drank his coffee in the morning. And he said he was sitting there, and he'd been praying. He and Valerie, his wife, is a real good Christian girl. They had been praying together about, what should I do? Should I quit teaching and go to work at the pawn shop? And Will said, I was sitting there at my desk drinking my coffee, and he said, Lord, if this is something you want me to do, quit teaching school, give me some kind of sign so I'll know that I'm doing what you want me to do. And about that time, the intercom came on and said, all male teachers report to the lunchroom, there's a fight. He said, "Thank you, Lord, thank you,
That
Lord."
was a good sign.
That was
He
it.
said,
Yeah.
I quit teaching.
Talk a bit about Will and Valerie's child, Luke, that was born
Without any eyes.
without any eyes, and just talk about that. Had to be a lot of heartache, but the blessing he's been to you
Lord,
guys.
yeah.
Just talk a little bit
He,
about that, Jerry.
He was born December the 1st, so we just celebrated his 9th birthday. If you can believe it, 9 years old, that little boy.
Gracious.
And every December the 1st, I can't help but think back on that day. I cried. I cried a river. I thought, I can't believe that. How in the world could God couldn't do that? I know he couldn't. I kept telling to go back and talk to those doctors. Something's wrong. That he's got eyes. I know he's got eyes. People have told me, they said they wanted to go to the hospital to see Will and Valerie. They knew they were distraught, and they said, we can't go. We just don't think we can take it. But they would go, and they said they would be blessed. They would be so blessed after they talked to Valerie and Will, because they just were so, why not send this?
It was such a heartache, and now you look back on it, that what they've done, and Luke is such a blessing to you, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it still breaks your heart.
Yeah.
But he's a happy child.
Right.
And that's
And he can hear.
and
As soon as
yeah.
I heard they didn't have any eyes, I said, Lord, please let him hear. Please let him be
He
able to
probably
hear.
can hear better than anybody.
He does.
He's got what they call echo. He can walk by a door. They could walk by that door right there and know that that's an opening.
like a bat.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's Braille.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, he's
yeah.
learning
He's into
Braille.
it
He's
now.
really picking up on Braille.
Yeah.
But he's a good kid. Like I said, it breaks your heart. The only thing, like, he asked his mother, "Mama, will I be able to see when I'm 18?" And that kind
Yeah.
of breaks your heart. But he's a good kid. He's smart as he can be. And his little sister, his big sister, is a good girl. She takes care
She's
of
a
him,
great
too.
big.
So how do you tell people that are listening that, this life can throw you some curves? Like you said, nobody, God, where are you? Well, how did this happen to me? How do you reconcile that? Just talk a little bit about. Start with you, Sandy.
Why not? How are we different from anybody else?
Yeah.
We're just, as Christians, we should be more equipped to handle adversity
Right.
than a lot of people. It still ain't no fun,
No.
but it's
A lot
it's
of people
part-
looking to us because we are Christians. See how we're going to handle
That's
it.
right.
Well, there's no telling how many people they've blessed. I mean, it's always these stories. Life throws people curves, and you got two choices when you get to curve. You run from it, or you can embrace it and figure out how to make the best out of it and let God use you to touch
the
other
truth.
people. And
I said that God just looked down and he said, I got to find me a family to send this little baby to. And he said, oh, there's Will and Valerie. Valerie's pregnant. I just let Luke be born to Valerie.
and that's something they got such a great. Luke's parents, Valerie and Will, got such a great attitude too.
They do.
They do. They really do.
It's tough sometimes, but they do. I got one thing I want to throw in here. When I came back to teach, I signed up to teach at Butler. They put the schools together before the school year started. And I know a lot of people didn't like it. A lot of people went other places to go to school, but it all wound up good. But let me tell you what happened when I came back. I didn't have anything to do. There was nobody around here for me to do much with then, but I started playing golf. I never had played golf until just a little bit before I graduated from college. So I started playing golf, went to Reynolds, and I was down there playing by myself, and there was a group of old men down there that was playing. One of them was Ed Goddard, one of them was Lester Halley, one of them was Richard Parks, and another one was Wade Lane. They were playing golf down there, and they saw me, and they invited me to play with them. And they didn't have to do that, and they did. And I know it ain't a fivesome, it's a foursome, but they invited me to play, and I played with them. I think Thursday afternoon
Right.
was when they played. I played with them nearly every Thursday afternoon for that school year that I was there, and I had never forgot it.
How about that? So, folks, the story is you got two little towns, and Butler's the county seat. Reynolds was the smaller town. They had to consolidate the schools. The people in Reynolds didn't want to lose their school because they would lose the town. And so people, including my daddy, was not happy. He wasn't against Butler. He just didn't want to lose that school in Reynolds, which is understandable. And it was some hurt feelings through all that. So the story is, and it's a great lesson, he didn't take it out on Sandy Harris.
No.
If things work out, but that's just the difficult. That was happening all over the state. It just wasn't.
Oh, it was everywhere.
It was everywhere. People they had to consolidate the schools. They couldn't afford to have all these schools, so it had to happen. So it all worked out. But that's a great story. I appreciate you saying that. So let's ask this. I want you to talk about through all you've done in life, and Jeri, I'll start with you. And by the way, when you talk, I remember your mama's voice, and I ain't thought about it in a long time, but I can promise you, I hear it when you talk. So just for people listening to this,
that makes me
there's going to be a lot of younger people that never heard Miss Wendy Wendell's voice.
Yeah.
But anyway, to hear your voice is to hear her voice, and that's one thing I want to get is people's voices, and that's so important. But it sounds just like it, doesn't it, Sandy? I mean, it sounds just like.
Appreciate that.
So talk about through your life just how much your personal faith, how important that's been to you.
It's been very important. I don't make a decision that we don't pray about it and ask God to direct us the way we should go, because I feel like if God's in control and He's directing us the way to go, it'll be the way we ought to be. That's where we ought to be, and things will work out.
So every decision you pray about, any major decision, you guys pray about it together to figure out. Well, how's that important to you, Sandy?
Always has been. My mother, daddy, my grandparents, anything we did. I don't say we jumping up and down, shouting and all that, but we pray about stuff.
Right.
Always have. And it always have. Like Jeri said, we really always have. Anything we've done, we talk about it. I think Jeri will agree with me, I've never made a decision on my own without talking to Jeri about it.
That's right. We talk it out.
We're in it together.
Right. And boy, that's a whole nother important thing.
It is.
I mean, yeah.
But whatever, we do it. But we pray about it. Talking about our pawn shops. That's not the most well thought of business in the world.
Right.
But done right, we prayed about that big time.
I bet.
Before I got into that. And I tell you what, one thing we do, and I put Will a lot of the credit, although I think we'd started before. We meet once a month. Now we've got it, well, we're cutting it back a little bit, but have our meeting, and we begin every meeting we have with prayer.
Right.
And we mean it.
Right.
The partners I got in it with, people told me how bad they were going to be to me. Come to find out, they're some of the best in the world.
That's
and,
amazing.
are Christian men.
Wow.
But you better not. If you think you can run your life without God's help, you in for a rude awakening.
How do you handle what you guys have handled, your situation now, what you've gone through, your grandchildren? You've been blessed by these kids and grandkids, and you've been through all of it. You've been blessed. You've been the sunshine and the rain. You guys have experienced. Jeri, what do you want people to remember about you?
That, my faith, that walks a Christian woman.
There walks a Christian woman. That's a pretty good thing to remember. What about you, Sandy?
I wanted to know I was a Christian man, and that I was a man of my word, that I would do what I said I would do. Going back to my boyhood, when you do something, do you know what Davy Crockett's motto was?
What?
Be sure you're right, then go ahead.
Right.
And that's what I hope
Wow.
that I've done in my life is what was right and try to do it the best I could.
Well,
I got to tell you, one of the greatest compliments I've ever gotten. I got, it's been a month or two ago now. Will called me one day and he said, Mama, Luke asked me last night, said, Daddy, call Gigi, that's what they call me,
Right.
all of them call me Gigi. Call Gigi and tell her to pray to God, pray that God will give me sweet dreams. And I said, just know that that child knows that I'm a praying grandmama.
that's amazing. Folks, I can tell you, there's nobody better to be praying for you than Jeri, unless it's my wife. She's right in there with you. She keeps a book, and when she says she's praying for you, she's doing it. When I say I'm praying for you, I may, but I guarantee she is. That's for a fact. That's true. So I want to tell you, just to be sure that we get this, I know this is true. You've had a wonderful life. You're still going strong. I hope y'all are here another 50. I hope I can come back on your 100th and let's do this again. But the truth is, God has been with you, but you've also worked your rear ends off. You just didn't sit back and say, I'm waiting on God to drop people from the sky to change my life. You worked your entire life. You took chances. You prayed about the chances, but you were never satisfied with just status quo. You did whatever you had to do to be successful in life. Both of you did, and I think that needs to be said because I know that's true.
You know, the one thing that didn't say when we were talking about growing up on the farm, Daddy always had something for me to do, and Mark and Dan. When I was 9 years old, Daddy had me uptown selling boiled peanuts, dime a bag. And then as I got a little older, I would pick them off. And then when I got old enough that I was ashamed to be out there walking the street with a bucket, put Mark out there, and I would pick them off, and we would pick them off. I would boil them and get ready. Mark and I paid for all of our clothes and stuff like that growing up by what we did on the farm working.
I know. I heard Mark tell those stories.
Oh,
yeah.
Lord, we
Yeah. So your hard work, it was not an accident. I mean, you grew up. That's what it's what you saw. Well, we live in a microwave type mentality now that you can do whatever you want in 2 minutes. Your life is you're sitting here at 78 and 80.
80.
You're 80. You're sitting here. Your life is accumulation of a lot of sweat and tears, and it didn't come easy, and it never does. But you're really and truly blessed. And I want to tell you, the people that know and love you are also blessed. I can tell you that, and I'm one of them.
Will called me. It's been about 3 or 4 months ago now, hasn't it? And he said, Mama, Luke has got the last 3 weeks, Luke has sat Valerie and me down every night wanting to know about God and about Jesus and about heaven. He said, we talk to him as best we know how. How do you talk to a child that's never seen anything, doesn't have a clue what anything looks like? And he said, but we just talked to him as best we could. Will drives him to school every day and Valerie picks him up. He said, today we were on our way to school, and he said, Monday through Thursday, I pray. He said, I pray every Monday through Thursday, every day, on the way to school, that Luke will do good at school, and he'll listen to his teachers, blah, blah, And he said, this week, he started again, asking me all those questions. What, how do I get to heaven? How do I know what heaven is? What does heaven look like? What is God? Who is God? What is Jesus? And Will said, I said, Luke, listen, if you're serious about this, and it seems like you are, today is your day to pray. All you've got to do is pray. I can't look at Kathy, I'll cry. Pray and ask God to forgive you of any sins that you think you might have committed, and just Jesus to stand at your heart knocking at the door. Just open the door and let him in. That's all you got to do. It's your day to pray. Do that if you want to. And so he said we were driving on down the road, and he prayed. And he said we got to the school, and the associate pastor was there at the school that day. And he said we pulled up in the parking lot, and said the pastor came out to the car, and I told him briefly what Luke had been doing the last 3 weeks. And and said so he just took Luke by the hand and they walked off and sat down on one of those little park benches, they have at school. And he said, I could not hear what the preacher was saying. I don't know anything he said, but I figured he was probably making sure Luke knew what he was doing and everything. And he said, but all of a sudden, Mama, all of a sudden, I heard Luke's voice and I knew Luke was fixing to say something. He said, I looked over there just in time to see Luke take his little finger and point at that preacher and say, I'm not going to hell. He said, when the preacher brought Luke over there, he said, don't worry, your son knows exactly what he did.
That is wonderful. Wow.
But I love that story.
Folks, this is from a little boy that's 9 years old. It was born with no eyes. But he can see.
He can see more than we can.
Viewing life from a hearse, it could be worse. Laugh, think, and cry with the country undertaker.